Welcome to Popcorn Psychology, the podcast where we watch blockbuster movies and psychoanalyze them. My name is Brittany Brownfield, and I'm a child therapist, and I'm joined by
Ben Stover, individual therapist.
Hannah Espinoza, marriage and family therapist.
We're all licensed clinical professional counselors, also known as therapists, who practice out of Chicago. Even though we are licensed mental health professionals, this podcast is purely for entertainment purposes and to fulfill our love of dissecting pop culture in all forms.
Please remember that even though we are all licensed therapists, we aren't your therapist.
If you are struggling with mental health symptoms, please find a local mental health provider.
Hello, we are here to rip apart a rom-com for our Valentine's Day special episode. Today we are talking about Never Been Kissed.
Yikes.
And it is a nightmare. Straight up.
Yeah, turn off now if you love this movie so much that it's going to hurt your feelings the rest of this episode.
Yeah.
Just turn it off now.
Yeah, because just do it. A little bit about the movie is it's a movie about a reporter getting their first undercover job as a student, and then her and the teacher fall in love, question mark.
Well, he looks at her with intense, deeply intellectual eyes.
The rumor mill at that school would be going crazy.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
With those
For
looks
sure.
he was giving her.
We're going to talk a little bit about Josie. We're going to talk a little bit about Rob. We're going to talk about whatever that relationship was that was between the teacher and the student. We're going to talk about...
And why is that okay?
Why
Which
was
is
this
not.
movie okay in 1999?
Yeah.
So where should we get started? Let's talk about Josie.
Josie Grossi.
Oh, boy.
So Josie Grossi, we get introduced to her. She's 25. She dresses like she's 85. At least. She's very passive. And she's never been kissed. I would say... I know one thing we were talking about before we recorded is like, what is her deal? And we were talking a little bit about what seems most obvious about her to start with. And she does seem to be someone who really, obviously, really struggles socially, given the conceit of the movie.
Yeah.
That she's someone who does not seem to have had any romantic anything up until now.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. She has not, and she seems to have a profoundly storybook understanding of what love is, and she can go on these big speeches that are quite obviously conglomerations of classic literature about what love is and what things are supposed to feel like.
Yeah. Oh, that bitch is neck deep in Jane Austen novels.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. She's watching the classic BBC
horrible.
miniseries, double VHS, that, yes, I owned, of Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy.
Wow.
1000%. Because the other one didn't even exist.
Not yet. Yeah, she's very romanticized. She seems to live in her own little world, for sure.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But seems content.
That's what I was going to say. She doesn't seem miserable, though.
Yeah, she seems maybe... Yeah, she doesn't seem miserable. She truly seems like she's found the things that give her joy, and she does them. Like when she's sewing the pillows, and she has like 100 pillows on her bed, and she just sews another one, and she seems so happy to put it in its little spot.
Yeah.
Like it seems like she's found a niche that she fits in, where people around her do seem to accept her.
Yeah, she's got like good friends at work, Molly Shannon and Octavia Spencer. She seems to really get along with them. She seems content with the way that she spends her evenings making her pillows. She found a job that fits her exact interest and like niche. Like she loves grammar and writing, and she found a job that does that.
Yeah, with copy editing and the newspaper in 99 is a big deal.
Yeah, she's ambitious, and she seems to be succeeding in her ambition.
Yeah.
She's, other than the fact that like she's got an assistant who's a douchebag who treats her like garbage.
Yeah.
And so she's really passive with him. She does seem to be someone who seems to be she presents like thinks she's doing fine.
Yeah.
She seems to like the way she dresses, even though it's horrible. She likes her gaucho pants.
She definitely does. She definitely does.
Oof.
Yeah, and even when she gets offered or commanded to take this job,
Yes.
to go undercover, she doesn't have like that stereotypical trauma response I feel like you have in movies like this, where she's like, they zoom really hard in her face, she's like, go back to high school. And because I feel like in other movies, that's when she would have like the trauma flashback to being bullied and mistreated. She genuinely just seems excited to be given the opportunity to shine at work.
Yeah.
And to possibly become like a reporter. And she only seems unsure about it and insecure once her brother points it out. And and honestly, I think he's coming from a protective place, obviously, but discourages her.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, and I think him pointing out to her of like, dude, this didn't go great
Yeah.
for you last time.
Do you remember what high school was like, Josie?
I mean,
That's what he
here's the thing.
says.
Here's the thing. He's not wrong in like looking her dead in the face and saying, girl, you couldn't pull off high school when you were in high school.
Yeah.
How are you going to pull off high school 7 years out of high school?
Yeah.
Like, I think he was trying to be real with her.
Yes.
But it is interesting that she's not cognizant of that until he brings it up.
That it might be a bad idea.
That might be
To
a bad
do
idea.
undercover.
Or that, like, she's choosing to revisit a time in her life that was really hard for her. Mm-hmm. That she's choosing to go back into an environment that she just struggled in so much.
Well, I think that's a part of what we were talking about before we started recording, which is that her social skills are lacking. And that she's young. She's immature and she seems young.
She seems both so young and so old simultaneously.
Yes, the clothing and the horrible
interest.
haircut that they gave her, the hair color, I mean, that they gave her for the...
That low bun and that dishwater hair.
Yeah.
She's so innocent. That's something I kept thinking.
Yeah.
Like, and she seems to be very similar to the high school version of herself. Not that it was like a big period of time between high school and 25.
Yeah.
But just like how she's so vulnerable and open with how she feels, it made me nervous for her. Like reading, but going back, like that's what I mean when she feels very young in that way. Like she doesn't have the social nuances and savvy and protectiveness that we all have as teenagers.
Or just no
No.
awareness. Just no, she doesn't have any awareness
Yeah.
about maybe anything.
I mean, not socially. She was
Yeah, I guess specifically socially. I guess I
specifically
should've said.
socially.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because she went to Northwestern. All of us have had clients from Northwestern, and
I'll tell you a story about that.
I think we've seen a few Josie types where they've had high success at academics and struggled socially.
Yeah, I actually got my specialty in grad school was counseling gifted kids. And a big part of that was almost like we only have so much intelligence in our brain. And if you're really, really intellectually intelligent, it's almost like it sucks from the other intelligences you can have. So one thing that we talked about a lot in those classes was how actually the smarter you are IQ-wise, the more likely you are to have a lot of social difficulties, to have a lot of emotional difficulties. It is like it eats the part of your brain that can do those other things almost.
Yeah, and I think I've seen that in a lot of people. I think there's always a balance somewhere. There's only so many points we get to make up our little map of where our skill sets lie in our brain. And with Josie, I think you see that she is very intellectually gifted.
And very socially clueless. Maybe that's the best word for her.
Oh, that's
She's
a great
just clueless.
description.
Like, when she reads that poem in her English class in high school, and it's just dead staring at the most popular boy in school, and it's so obvious that that's about him. And she's like almost crying. And she thinks she's like winning him over. And later, when they think that he's gonna ask her to prom, the prank, her friend tells her, and she's like, the poem worked. And I was like, girl, you have got to be kidding me. Like, I just kept thinking she has no social risk awareness, protectiveness, that she's walking into a trap, but also that she's no awareness of almost like the social hierarchy of school, how the class system of school works, cliques, like all of that social intelligence that comes with that age.
Right. That we all start to learn. You start to figure out who your tribe is and who they aren't. Mm-hmm. And she seems to be kind of stuck in that idea of like, well, if I like it a lot and just perform it really well, then they'll understand and like it as much as I do, and also therefore like me, and it'll work. And that's a really common trait that you see in gifted kids, and also in perhaps the neuroatypical community of like, I like something a lot and I'm going to talk about it a lot so that other people will learn to, if they just like it as much as I do, then, and I like it, then they'll like me and I'll be cool. And you're like, that's not how that works.
Well, where you get really caught up in your special interest.
Right.
And you don't have a lot of social awareness that your special interest isn't someone else's special interest. It also, something you just said too, Ben, sparked an idea in me that if she is someone that is so deeply romantic and maybe consumes a lot of romantic media, I wonder if like she's copying what she's also seen in movies.
Oh yeah.
Of like, I'm just going to have this big like proclamation of love.
I mean, 10 Things I Hate About You.
And that does work though. But
and it works in this one too.
But she's missing all the elements of that.
She is.
But just the idea of like, I could definitely see her thinking, well, I just watched, I don't know, any Jane Austen-y kind of movie, and the protagonist just like says this big speech and like a show of love towards the person that gets so swept off their feet that they're like, I'm finally seeing you for the first time, and I'm just gonna write this poem for Billy, and I'm gonna read in English class, and it's all gonna click. And I'm just like, ugh.
But also that very naive idea that one thing will make you cool.
Well, the idea that things can turn around like that.
And also the idea that there's one magical thing. That it is one magical thing.
Right. Right. Because it's not.
Yeah.
Coolness almost is effectively, I don't give a fuck what you think about me. I'm going to be me. There's more to it. You know,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Absolutely.
Just kind of have it or don't.
And I will say too, like now that we've kind of put it in the ether, she does feel like she could be neurodivergent in some context.
Yeah.
I don't want to label her any more than that.
Nope.
But her like lack of social cues, lack of social awareness, that lack of like understanding social hierarchies. When I've worked with people who are more neurodivergent, they can really struggle with understanding power too. That person has more social capital than me, or that person has more literal capital than me, or power. So I have to adjust how I approach them differently. This more comes out with authority figures when I work with teenagers on the spectrum or her neurodivergent. Like, well, if my mom can yell at me, then I should be able to yell at her.
Yeah.
Or something like that. You know what I mean? If my teacher can boss me around, I should be able to boss them around, and really struggling also to like understand and accept that there are differences in people's positions socially. And that might also be why later in the movie, when she is undercover and she's falling in love with her teacher, why she might not also understand how bizarre that is too, or how inappropriate that is.
I was thinking the exact same. I was having
that
the
of
exact
course
same
she'd be
thought.
like, well, we like each other, and what does it matter if he's a teacher and I'm a student in this dynamic, because we're just people.
And I'm an adult, actually.
but not understanding all the nuances of that
Right. That
and the power of that.
he sees you as a child, even though you see him as a man, like a woman seeing a man. He's seeing you as a man seeing a child,
Yeah.
and that's not the same.
Yeah.
Because it's one way for you doesn't mean it's okay. As soon as he gets that missing piece of information, that the parallels she must be drawing, and I mean, it subtext to the Shakespeare play.
Oh, As You Like It?
Yeah.
As You Like It.
That she's Rosalind in a mask. And you just go like, oh my God.
Girl,
90s,
no.
90s
Girl,
writing.
no.
90s writing. Oh no.
And I think the other things that she does that also make me think she's more maybe neurodivergent is the way that she corrects everyone's grammar, that very literalness, very Amelia Bedelia of, when... Do you know who Amelia Bedelia is?
Yeah. I know I do. Like, yeah.
Like, I remember very specifically in this movie when John C. Reilly's character and Molly Shannon's character are like fighting in her office, and they're talking about sex, like making love. She's like, they're not dating, they're having sex. And it's like, that is not the time to correct. Like, she's so pedantic. Like, now is not the time to correct a misspeaking, or that she's not understanding that Molly is intentionally using euphemism.
Right.
To change the way that relationship is. It's like that stuff too, of like also not understanding how annoying it is socially to correct people's grammar.
And gonna get somebody fired. Like, not only that, but like, dude, be cool.
Yeah. She's so literal, all that stuff. Here's the thing too, is I feel like what is great if you are neurodivergent is she found a job that seems to encapsulate her special interest, which is great.
Absolutely.
She found a job where she can be obsessive about grammar and writing and specificity and all that stuff.
And it makes me think about even the stories that she wants to write about being undercover, how like they're just not like she comes to him about the coleslaw and what's in the coleslaw. Like she doesn't have awareness about
like that's not a sexy story.
Yeah, exactly. And she has to have some awareness because she's in the field, some awareness about what they usually write in the paper.
Right, and exposés.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, it's salacious.
Yeah, nobody gives a fuck about coleslaw.
No, somebody's life is getting like wrecked because they're doing something they're not supposed to, and you're there to find it.
Yeah. Or even just like the fact that they got scooped about the court, like the place where all the kids go to act out,
to hang out,
and to party. And the fact that she's aware of the court and it doesn't occur to her. Oh, that's the kind of story they're looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I will say, going back to what we were talking about earlier too, is I think also where she feels more neurodivergent is a lot of people, well, here's what I'll say is we have a neurotypical centered world, right? And so she does feel like someone who is having a decent time in life with her neurodivergent self. It's just the world around her is not letting her be that way, or they're the one calling attention to her and how she doesn't fit in, right? Like we were saying, how she seems to be content. She seems to like the way she dresses. She seems to like how she spends her time. It's all the neurotypical people around her, like her brother, who keeps saying, that's wrong. No, you're wrong. That's wrong to dress that way. It's wrong to act like that. It's wrong to like those things. And I will say something that has changed a lot for me in the past few years when I work with neurodivergent clients is I'm trying to be aware of how much I'm centering the neurotypical experience and I'm unintentionally othering them, and how it's more just like two ways of experiencing the world.
Yeah.
And not necessarily one's right and one's wrong.
Yeah.
And that you can be neurodivergent like the way that Josie might be, and that does it, and have a life that maybe looks different than it would to a neurotypical person, but you're not necessarily like living a bad life. Like if Josie came in my office at the beginning of the movie, I would really want to explore with her, but do you like what you're doing? If you like staying in on the weekends, and if you like cross-stitching pillows, and if you like your pants,
who gives a shit?
You know what I mean? Like, why do you feel like you need to change?
Right. And that's one of the things that's in the criteria of all of our mental disorders is it causing distress?
Yeah.
Has to be causing distress. I was going to say the same thing, Ben. It's a part of any diagnosis. Like the diagnosis only is qualified by that one thing. It has to be causing you distress, and she does not seem distressed. She seems more distressed being the undercover reporter and having to have the story, and she seems more distressed there than she does anywhere else.
But I would say that stress feels normal because she is a copy editor. She's not a reporter. They threw her into another undercover role.
Yeah, which is bonkers.
And then they pressure the shit out of her. And
Yeah.
then they even pressure like the boss, her boss, John C. Reilly, like, you're both gonna get fired. So like
Yep.
the stress she feels is understandable given that she's given
fair.
basically no direction.
Yeah.
And also they didn't do anything other than vet her that she's young. Like they didn't do any vetting in terms of like her charisma, social skills, her ability. She obviously doesn't dress like she would fit in a high school.
Yeah.
Like Molly Shannon looks more visually prepared to fit into a high school aesthetic than Drew Barrymore's character.
Yes.
Like Drew Barrymore's character also looks clueless in terms of like knowing how to go in and be undercover as a high school student.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and looking at how things like that are normally done, where people are given handlers and have somebody to check in with outside of the life that they're operating to stay grounded to their own identity, and a way to do that. I know this isn't, like a deep undercover thing, or someone's going 6 months into gangland or whatever, but it's important to recognize that she was set up in a way that was not okay. Like, I think she wanted to be a reporter. She had talked to him about it.
She wants to be a reporter. And I think they kind of mentioned how she's already risen up pretty quickly
Yeah.
in the ranks already. I mean, she's 25 and she has an assistant. That's pretty dope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think they were kind of saying, girl, you're too ambitious. Like, chill out. You'll be a reporter eventually. You have to earn your
Stripes.
earn your stripes. And then this opportunity just falls into her lap by their
Maniac boss.
the maniac owner of the newspaper.
Oh, yeah. Well, they were... I think the way I saw it was that they were trying to help... Like, they had her on a different track. Like, the editor, the copy editor, like the in-house people versus the field people.
Yeah.
It seemed like John C. Reilly's character was flip-flopping on, at first going, like, you're not really...
For the field, yeah.
For the field, that's not really kind of your jam, and they were creating a safe kind of spot for her to succeed in,
Yeah.
and letting her succeed. And then as soon as it became his ass to the fire, all of a sudden it became fine for her to be in a position she was in no way prepared for.
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem John C. Reilly's character does have her number.
Yeah.
As her supervisor of like, girl, you're not going to be in the field until he has to figure out how to help her be in the field
Yeah.
because it goes over his head.
Right. And I guess she does kind of have a handler with the audio, the AV guy.
Oh, the AV guy.
Yeah.
But he can't talk to her though because he yells in the van a lot.
Yeah, he's on communication with her.
Like for instance, if they had an
he was
earpiece
comedic
in,
relief. He was token 90s.
yeah. But like if she had an earpiece in when she was gonna eat that pop brownie, that would have been really good for her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like she needed someone with more social savvy to like be in her ear, like that tech guy.
Yeah.
And be like, do not eat that brownie. You were about to get shit faced.
Right.
There's probably like so much weed in that brownie.
Oh,
It was a huge piece of cake.
well, just looking at like their faces, like I don't think they intended for her to eat the whole thing either.
Definitely did.
I mean, I think
No, I think they were like, oh shit, she just ate a whole half of that. She ate the whole fucking piece of cake. Yeah.
yeah, and speaking of like her seeming dramatically out of place, I don't think she ever seemed more out of place than in that scene when how clear it was that she was not perceiving any social norms whatsoever than in that club.
I mean, she just can't pick up on all social cues. Like the social cues in her are just living in two different neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she just which is also what's so sweet about her, but hurts, is she just la-di-das into these situations so earnestly. Like, I'll
So
just show up with a
earnestly.
feather boa because I think cool people wear feather boas.
Anita got her that outfit.
What?
Anita got her that outfit.
Sure did.
Okay. Yeah. But just the way that she shows up in all these places. But now that we're talking about this more too, it also clicks more why. Because if she's 25 in this high school scenario, if anybody should be skeeved out by the teacher, it should be her. Because she knows that he thinks she's a teenager.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She
Right.
should have more perception on that than like her peers. Because when Hannah and I were watching it, we were like, why did we love this movie so much when we were young? This movie is fucking nuts.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, Hannah, when we were teenagers and watched this movie, this was wish fulfillment. When you're a teenager and there's the hot teacher at your school and your stupid teenage brain is like
just full of just
wild ideas,
chemicals and ideas and
Hormones.
horniness.
Right,
It's
but at
like-
25, you should be like,
your frontal
Whoa.
lobe is locking in. You know what I mean? Like that's usually when people have better perception on like past relationships that had like power dynamics.
Yeah.
You know, when you're a teenager, you're supposed to kind of be an idiot and be like, ooh, I think that maybe if I wore this shirt tomorrow, Mr. Smith, whatever, maybe he'll like think I'm cool. Like you have those fantasies about like winning over the much older teacher. But when you're older, that would your brain, like I said, your frontal lobe locks in and you're like, oh, that's bananas that I thought that. And if they did, that's gross on their part. Like that would be taking advantage of me. So the fact that she goes into this space knowing that he thinks that she's a student and it doesn't bother her at all,
Yeah.
I think also
Right.
says a lot about her social awareness and intelligence.
Yeah.
Like I said, going back to the not recognizing power dynamics, which includes age. Mm-hmm. You know, thinking everyone's like her peer, kind of. Mm-hmm. And it's just brutal.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else we want to specifically say about Josie? Poor little Josie.
no, not specifically. I think we've covered her pretty well. It's
It makes sense why she's never been kissed.
it really does.
She probably has a hard time relating to peers. You know, even you could say like her only friends are work friends and they're older than her. Mm-hmm. So actually we don't see her with any
The only
peers
friend
out of work.
The only friend that she has in the whole movie is when they show her when she's young, when she's a high school student. She has that one friend
Yeah.
who's as gullible as she is,
Yep.
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Just like, but nobody who had enough social wherewithal when, like, no one to relay the words of Akbar to her and tell her it's a trap if the most popular boy unexplainably wants to take you to prom. Like,
You know, and I'll say this. We're about to talk about Rob anyway. Fuck Rob.
Yeah,
For
1,000
not
ways sideways,
warning
that
her about
motherfucker.
that. When he was like, good luck tonight, when she's got that tinfoil outfit on, which is also not current for the time. If she was in high school 7 years before, it was like early 90s. Why is she wearing the 80s ass outfit?
Yeah, it's really weird.
Anyway, but the fact that he was popular and therefore he probably was very familiar with Billy and maybe even rolled around in similar groups with him.
Yeah.
seems likely.
The fact that he does not
Do anything.
give her a heads up,
But this dude is
like, I'm
Bad
worried
news.
for you. Let me go out there with you. Like, vet the situation a little bit.
yeah,
Fuck him for that.
fair.
Anyway, so we will take a break here and then we will come back and talk about Mr. Rob.
Ugh.
All right, Mr. Rob, the sibling of Josie,
Yes.
who gave her that nickname
At school.
and effectively ruined her.
I mean, I
don't think he
fought with
ruined
my
her social
siblings
life,
at
but-
home, but I never brought anything from home to school.
Yeah.
No, we
Ever.
no.
Yeah.
Never, ever. So the fact that he did that, just again, maybe their parents don't have good social skills.
I mean, I think there's like a lot of movies we talk about here. We don't get a
Right.
lot of background. We were even racking our brains before we recorded about like, are their parents dead? Like,
Yeah.
where are their parents in this movie now? Because they're only 23 and 25.
Yeah.
I don't know if we all missed it, but maybe their parents passed away and Rob lives in their house. And
Maybe because
whatever.
they just both look so goddamn old. It just doesn't feel like it matters
He
where their
looks-
parents are.
The idea that
Right.
that in this movie they're trying to make me believe that David Arquette could pass for a high school student. I know he's 23 supposedly in this movie, but you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Oh, by 99, well, he was already like married to
Probably he's already done Scream. Scream was 3 years before.
Yeah.
where they were a stretch for high school students already. Mm-hmm. Oh no, he was a cop, right?
Yeah, he was a
Dude.
cop. He was already not a teenager in Scream.
Right.
Yeah.
Years before.
He's married to Courtney Cox by this time, isn't he?
Probably.
Yeah.
Or close
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
He's
when
like
he,
30.
When he pops up
Yeah.
on screen and I'm like, this guy's going to go back to high school in this movie. I'd be like, what is this? 21 Jump Street? Like, you gonna try to, you a cop? I'd be like, you're a cop.
You're a cop.
If you showed up in my high school, I'd be like,
Right.
get away from me, you narc.
Did you just refer to that blue Gatorade as blue raspberry? Cop.
What are the youths up to, guys? I'd be like, get away from me.
Where are they selling those marijuana cigarettes?
Those jazz cigarettes. No, but I think what is interesting that they show in this movie is that Josie is arguably the nerd in high school, right? Like king of the nerds, pretty much.
Yes.
And she has, I would argue, a pretty successful adult life outside of the romantic aspect of it.
Yes.
Like she has her own place. She's making probably a good amount of money at 25. She had a really good degree, right? And then the flip of it, kind of the other side of her, is Rob, who was wildly successful in high school. You could argue peaked in high school. And now he is in this total downward, trajectory.
Yeah. And what happened to him that he
He got injured.
got
I think.
hurt.
got hurt? Oh,
He got hurt. He started playing.
He got hurt.
He got hurt in his first year of trying to play college ball.
Which happens all the time.
All the time.
Kids are always getting hurt playing sports.
Yeah. And so it seems like he has his own kind of his own version of Arrested Development, where I'm curious if the job he's working now, the tiki place, tiki post, a tiki themed. Also something about the 90s where they just acted like we were all going to have like themed everything.
Yeah.
Like it can't just be a post office. It's tiki themed.
And not even a post office, like a pack and ship place.
Yeah, like a FedEx.
Like
But not a FedEx.
But not a FedEx. It's like the place that's by
the box and the markers,
The stationery.
and and like the bubble wrap.
Right. Like the place by where you and I used to live. Brittany and I, fun fact, used to live right by where
This movie was filmed.
right by the apartment where Josie lived.
Okay. Yeah, but I'm curious if he's had that job since high school, or maybe that was the job he got once he got injured and then he
I
just
think-
never progressed.
It seems as though that is the job he had when he was a teenager, because the girl that he's
Dating? The
dating,
16-year-old
that's
he's
16
dating?
years old, she says you don't want to still be working at the tiki post, and it makes me think that he very much just came back and started working at his old like high school job.
Yeah, because she says, that's the job you have in high school, Rob. That's not like a real job.
Yeah, which is also a funny way of looking at things that, the 90s taught us all of. Like, let's go ahead and look down on jobs that are in any way not college jobs.
Well, that was back when, like, you get that college degree, baby. You're set for fucking life.
Well, that was the story.
Now we know better.
That was the story. Now, my friend who drives a forklift is doing better than most of my friends who got college degrees, and like we mixed up some details in the 90s to talk down on the stuff like that of like no, you can care for family just fine with all kinds of jobs.
Yeah. But he's clearly stunted. He's living in their parents' house. Maybe maybe they did pass away and he inherited it.
Maybe.
Or maybe they both inherit it, and Josie, she seems like the type who would be like, you can just live there, Rob. I have my own apartment,
Yeah. Or they're just out of town.
I really feel like they're dead. I mean,
I also
write
really
in
feel
guys
like
if they're
they're
dead. Write in guys if they're dead.
I feel like they're dead.
Or they were fridged.
Something.
They're just gone.
Yeah, they're just gone. And she's trying to encourage him to go back to to enroll in community college, the fictional Lakeshore Community College, which is actually a decent name for a fake college in Chicago. And he just is disinterested. He is in full melancholic ennui,
I think very much I had a dream for my life, and now that dream's not a possibility, and I don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah.
This wasn't the way it was supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
And people do get stuck in that, just like
Yeah.
we see him did, or him do in this movie.
Him do.
Well, I need Josie to come
Him
in
do
here and
and he
help me.
did.
But did she?
Yeah.
And did he also?
Yeah.
With her approval? Yeah, I think it's very common to see people get stuck in some kind of version of themselves that they didn't get to either actualize or grieve. Mm-hmm. So it creates a nested loop. I've talked about those before. A little unclosed loop of personality function that didn't get to either complete its function or age out. Mm-hmm. Things that we have done enough. You'll even hear kids say "Oh, I don't watch Peppa Pig anymore, Daddy. Peppa Pig is for babies." Mm-hmm. And the parent will sit there like, "Do you know how much Peppa Pig shit I had to buy for you to play with, and how many times we watched those clips ad nauseum?" And they're like, "That's for babies, Daddy." And you're like, "For babies, that playhouse you have sitting in the other room cost $50 1 year ago. It's for babies." And
Ben?
they're done.
Ben, are you okay?
Yeah.
If you look to the left, you will see a Peppa Pig playhouse.
I feel like we're sinking into something real for you.
But it's also, it lends to the point, and yes,
Yeah.
maybe perhaps.
We're recording in Ben's house, so we are aware of the Peppa Pigs.
We are aware of the things are in my sightline, including Peppa Pig Playhouse.
Yeah.
All right. So,
But also update, Ava no longer likes Peppa Pig.
Yeah, everybody listening who's been tracking Ava, she does not like Peppa Pig anymore.
She
Stop
does
sending
not.
us Peppa Pig stuff.
right. No, we're
She doesn't want it.
we're onto Trolls and Barbies now.
Oh, dope.
But anyway, that loop that gets stuck. Sometimes we get in kind of an Arrested Development loop with something where you keep thinking anyone cares. A lot of people talk about stories of their life, but there's a difference between not moving beyond it. Mm-hmm. I'm a former high school athlete, and that factors into part of who I am, but it doesn't define me.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone needs to care what academic or athletic successes or failures I had when I was 16. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. It can be part of stories or context to things, but it's not
It's such a small part of our life
right.
as a lifetime,
Yeah.
as a human.
It is, but all these movies that we all watch and consume, and they make it feel like it's supposed to be so much more. And that you either make it or don't then.
Yeah. I mean, and I think this is a common trope, right? Of the person who peaks in high school or they peak in college, and then they just become a quote unquote loser because they don't know how to evolve and they're stuck in their past.
Right. And then because there is no past to complete the loop and let it carry out its normal function, like for athletes that get injured, they had invested so very much of their identity and activities and social network, all their social capital, everything is on this identity of being this ball player. And I don't think we do a very good job as a society of educating youth athletes that there are 32 professional football teams. There's 30 professional baseball teams. There's 25 guys that make the baseball teams professionally. 25 by 30. That's not a lot. And I don't think it clicked in my head until way too late, and to realize, you know how many D1 colleges have games on Saturday full of kids that want nothing more than to be playing in 2 or 3 years on Sundays, and how very few ever do get to that point. And then you see guys like him, like that are so stuck, like that. Those loops, whatever they are, and whenever they happen, can become really difficult to get past.
So it makes me think about too how we do, especially back then, I think, do such a disservice to kids when we also over-identify them with one trait. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if in their family, Josie's the smart one and Rob's the athlete.
Oh.
And then when you do that to a kid, unintentionally or intentionally, when something happens where they get robbed, no pun intended, of the trait that they over-identify with, they will have an existential spiral, sometimes as young as teenagers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then they get stuck because I'll tell you this, I wouldn't be shocked if Rob thought he was really dumb. Like, he seems like he feels insecure about his intelligence.
Yeah.
And so even like attending something like a community college would feel really vulnerable to him, perhaps. Like, all I could be was an athlete.
Yeah.
That got ruined.
I don't have anything else.
The best I can do now is the tiki place. And what also you would think would be a protective factor, but is kind of maybe like an enabling factor, is that he has his housing taken care of. Like, it's probably, the house is probably paid off, you know? And so he probably only has to pay for his food and the bills. You know what I mean? So it allows him to stay stuckish.
Yeah.
Like, he's the kind of guy that would become manager of the tiki post.
Yeah.
Maybe the way that he became safe again, but that stands a significant danger of being limited to that milieu, and that he may shy away from, but I had this other identity taken from me, so I'm just going to stay here where I'm safe.
Yeah.
Like, he hasn't even, I don't think he's talking about finding a way to get into some of the local minor league tryouts, get in front of scouts, but he's so stuck in the ways that he would have done that as a younger person that he's not thinking about like the amateur tryouts for adults that most certainly exist.
Yeah. Or even what he ends up doing at the end of this movie, which is, you could become a coach, you become a phys ed teacher. You know what I mean? Like, there is other things he can do with this skill that he's not even allowing himself to explore, because it's not going to be at the caliber of his ideal when he was younger and his dream.
Right.
So he's just, it's very all or nothing. If I can't do it exactly how I was going to do it when I was 18, then I don't want to do it at all. And you can't make me.
Well, and you see this in many ways. I've seen people do this who wanted to join the military that for some reason couldn't.
Like Little Miss Sunshine.
Yeah, kind of like that, where they like latch into that, like, we unaffectionately call them play army asshole culture. Like, the dudes who like have to have like what the military would have, like they have to have like their M4,
they get
like,
Soldiers of Fortune magazine, like a bunch of dorks.
Yes. I was brought up in a military household with guns, but like not.
They become doomsday preppers / informal militia members.
That kind of thing, where like they would have never served, but they be like, they have to, like, because they didn't get this loop closed of like getting to do the thing and then having it change to a mature view on it. Like, people who have served are like, yeah, bro, you know the bullets come back at you when you're not fantasizing.
Like, it's not play.
It's not play.
We're not LARPing.
It's not a game.
Yeah.
Like, explosions come at you too. Like, it's terrifying. And I wouldn't go back ever if you, like, unless I had to.
Yeah.
And then you see the people that like kind of, they couldn't do it, so they spend a lot of an inordinate amount of their time and resources, kind of like we use the criteria for substance abuse, acquiring and getting stuck in and buying things. And that doesn't just have to be for guns or play army guys or like whatever. It can be anything, but people get stuck in these loops and then.
I mean, it's the classic thing too of people who never stop talking about college, people who never stop talking about high school, like Uncle Rico and Napoleon Dynamite, who's like, watch me, who's videotaping himself do 6 spirals. For who and for what?
Right.
You know? And
The people are totally going to go on tour.
yeah. And I think what's so sad about it, not even sad from like a mean, pathetic sense, but sad in like a genuine empathy sense, is you're not enjoying the life that you're living because, like you were saying, Ben, your brain is so stuck in the past and it's crippling you. Like you, and though this is obviously the movie version of it, Rob is so stuck in this all or nothing thinking that he really thinks his only other option is to try to do a redo where he will convince people. Is he gotten fake papers drawn up? Does he have a fake birth certificate?
No, remember he makes himself a student ID at the Tiki Post.
The Tiki Post. But like, he's not thinking about if someone finds this out, like the level of fraud. Like if he did get if he did get picked for like a college or something like that, like there's an expiration date to this scam you're pulling off, bro.
And a routine crippling anxiety that will run underneath all whatever success you might get.
They could be ripped up from under you at any moment. And it does.
Yeah.
And it does.
Oh, it does. It will go poorly. Yeah, if the whole high school team would get disqualified.
Yeah, for having a kid that is that old on the thing, they'd be like fined or like have to sit out the whole season. Like that's a major thing.
So scandalous.
I mean, if it was proven that it was an adult that did it and like he just duped them, like, but the win would still be vacated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he would ruin all those kids' chances.
Yeah.
To succeed. Just how tunnel vision he is, and how like reckless and impulsive that is.
Absolutely.
Because he just decides to do it.
Yeah.
Like overnight almost.
Yeah, definitely
Like,
overnight.
I see what Josie's doing. And you can see him also trying to convince himself that he's doing something noble as well. Like, I'm helping my sister out. I'm going to go and I'm going to help her be popular. And if I just happen to be able to get like attention from scouts, like that's just like icing on the cake. Like the way he's rationalizing this to himself.
Oh yeah, like I want to play in but coach, you think I can play in the game? Like,
Yeah.
Of course my skill set as a grown man is massively dwarfing what these 16-year-olds are capable of doing. Like, no kidding.
Yeah. And also, this movie takes place over 2 months.
Yes.
So this is more movie magic. But the idea that he thinks he can just show up, like, for a few weeks, rise in the ranks of this baseball team as a senior, I'm assuming, and take over from another senior. You know what I mean? Take someone else's position.
Oh no, that's real.
Oh, well, anyway. But just how, I don't know, thoughtless the whole situation is. I mean, I guess where I can throw him a bone is he's 23. His frontal lobe is not fully developed, even though he doesn't look 23.
I think the other thing that's not believable, that's what we're kind of talking about a little bit, is also the fact that South Glen South is where they both went to high school at.
Is it?
Yes.
I go back and forth on that. I don't know if that's where they went to high school.
I'm pretty sure it's where they went to high school.
I'm with you. He seemed oddly familiar with it, but they didn't seem to confirm or deny.
I don't think they ever, confirm or deny. But I know the point you're going to make. Go ahead, Hannah.
So the point I'm going to make is that if he's only been out of school for a little bit of time, they
5
should
years.
fucking know who he is.
Especially if
If
he was an all-star.
that good on the baseball team, they should know who he is.
Probably has a picture on the
Exactly.
like, in the trophy
The teachers
case
know
area.
who he is.
The coach.
Everything. So also, there's also some pieces to the story that just don't. There's a big loopholes.
Pothole City.
Pothole
armor.
City. Everywhere.
Pothole City.
Everywhere.
Where are their parents and did they go to this high school? Those are pretty big things. But but I will say he does do the thing that we see people do when they're back in their familiar environment, which is he blossoms like a flower, eating that coleslaw.
Oh yeah. Well, just imagine all of the skills you would have if you could go back with all of the like awareness and things you could
Oh yeah.
do, and all of the things you would just like dismiss your attention from, of knowing like nah, that doesn't matter. I don't need that. I'm going to focus on getting them scholarships by being smart. And I'm not going to waste my time at bashing my head in with a helmet on that will go nowhere fast. All of these things that people talk about doing of like, I wouldn't have played sports, or I wouldn't have done theater, I wouldn't have done music or whatever, because all that goes nowhere. I would have been like focusing on X, Y, or Z, or I'd have gotten a job, or I'd have started my business, whatever.
But I think Rob blossoms because he wants to do the exact same thing he was doing before. Like, he's falling back into the only role that he feels comfortable with.
Right, but he's also doing it with the advanced knowledge of what didn't work, so he can... Like, sure, is he doing that less successfully than perhaps anyone who's fantasized about doing that would do? Yes.
You couldn't pay me $1 bajillion to go back to high school.
No
You
way.
couldn't pay me to go back to high school, and I was like a popular kid in high school.
Hannah was a Mr. Rob in high school.
Yeah. A lot of siblings. I was a homecoming queen, all the
Class
whole
president.
the whole shebang. Yep, all of the things. And I still wouldn't go back.
No.
Yeah.
Not a million fucking years.
I wasn't that. I was exactly where I am now, somewhere in between.
Yeah, but the ease in which he slides back into that role, and the ease in which he wants, I mean, where I feel bad for him is he just wants to be a teenager again so bad. Because that's where he identifies his value and his strengths. And he doesn't seem to have progressed, which I will say, at that time when everyone was being pushed to go to college, when you chose not to go to college, that would cause potentially like a big disparity with you and your peer group.
Oh, sure.
You know, and the fact that he's staying home and he's living in his parents' house still, the house he grew up in. He's working this arguably like dead end kind of job.
Yeah.
You know, and all of he feels like someone too that would, because they're not dealing with the trauma of their injury and the change in the trajectory of their life. I could also see him pushing away all of his friends, because I'm sure his whole peer group and all his friends were other athletes, you know, most likely other popular kids. And so he also strikes me as someone that, even if his friends were still trying to be his friends, I could see him like isolating, like totally shutting down.
Oh, yeah.
And not being able to deal with seeing other people live the life that he wanted for himself.
Yeah, I mean, the Xer reality was a lot different than what ours was. We were prepped for the Xer reality, the Gen X reality of like, go to college, or like you're going to have a starkly different social stratification. Period.
They just didn't make it seem like there was any other fucking option.
No, they and that's, you know, we were all kind of conditioned for that, and then the world fell apart.
Yeah.
Right when we graduated, pretty much. So that, I think, perspective we're coming at it from like watching that be true to watching it not be true, of being able to like look at these characters and go, no, this was true for them.
Yeah, also, like I said, the part of you're not encouraged to be like a well-rounded person necessarily.
No.
You either get into college because you're smart, or you get into college because you're an athlete, and you just like full tilt push in whatever direction is going to get you into college. And yeah, I think I shouldn't act like I know anything about athletics, but with what I'm about to say.
True.
But are they changing things up so that student athletes have to be more involved in academic life? Like, they can't coast like they used to? Maybe I'm making that up, or maybe I'm just wishful thinking. But I think it's where they set up kids like Rob for failure, though, because I do know kids who, like, when you're more athletically inclined and that's bringing prestige, like, those kids will coast in school. So I could also definitely see where Rob might genuinely have educational, like, blind spots. Because he could have been the kid where they barely pass all their classes and none of their teachers give a shit because he's such a good athlete and they want him to play that weekend. And he's got an athlete scholarship anyway, so who cares what his grades are like?
Yeah.
And then those kids are set up for failure because not only are they over-identified with that skill, they also are sometimes literally not taught to have other skills.
Well, they're not. And their lifestyle, even then, although not as much as now, were rec sports weren't as professionalized, and youth sports weren't as professionalized then as they are now, with like travel leagues and stuff. Like some of the
That
kids,
shit is insane.
it's nuts.
That shit is insane.
We overschedule our kids, and that's all I'll say about that.
I know you got that right.
Yeah, that's an understatement. But it wasn't as much then. But the kids that
Yeah,
made
not as
it
much then. Yeah.
into pro sports were in
Yeah.
that life.
That's their whole life.
Even then,
Oh yeah.
you know, like they were swimming, or they were doing this. They're doing like they had private coaches, and like
Well, that's your whole weekend. Like your
Your whole
whole
life.
life
it's their whole life.
is being this one thing,
Yeah,
and then that gets taken from you. And like we were saying, that also where it's really horrific that adults do this to kids too. Like we were talking about at the top of this topic, is the probability that you will succeed and have a flourishing, a long career as an athlete is so statistically improbable, and the likelihood that you'll get injured early in your career and be fucked. You know what I mean? That you're one like snapped bone away from like, now you have to do your life differently. Goodbye. And
Pretty
they
much.
don't prep kids for that.
no,
And so, you know, it would be interesting to know more about Rob around that time,
Yeah.
like 18, and what happened directly after that. And if he's just been in this, I assume he's just been in this stasis for the past 5 years, which is a long time
To be stuck.
To be stuck. And like the concept of a townie,
right?
which is kind of what he is,
Yeah.
yeah,
you know, which isn't really a word I've even heard in recent years. Like that felt very specific to that time period. Like there were
Yeah.
kids that went to college and there were townies.
Yeah.
right,
And you always said it with that tone of voice, like, oh, he's a townie.
Yeah.
Gross.
right.
And Rob is a townie.
Yeah, he's a townie, and there's a difference between being like a successful tradesperson and being a townie.
Yeah.
Not always, but the mentality of like, no, I'm just here doing my thing.
Yeah.
Not
And it
growing.
also makes me wonder if their parents are dead, like we're hypothesizing.
Right.
When did they die?
I know.
Did they die around the same time or a little after?
I think what's confusing for me is that you would think, because Rob is older.
No, he's younger. He's 2 years younger than Josie.
He is younger than her. Okay.
He's 23. She's 25.
Oh, for some reason I was thinking he was older.
Well, it's probably because he looks older. And in real life, I think he's older.
Oh yeah. Well, then my point is mute. Is moot.
Oh, like if
because-
he had to like be the man, like step
Yeah,
up.
like if he was an older sibling and then your parents die and then you take the role of taking care maybe of the younger sister, and how
Yeah.
he doesn't have that protectiveness about her, even though she so clearly could have used him.
I mean, I think you can make an argument for the flip, which is that Josie is so high functioning in terms of stability, and
Sure.
she probably took everything over, and it really allowed him to stay in a younger place mentally.
Yeah.
Like he maybe didn't even have to grow up when that happened,
Yeah.
because she feels like someone who she probably was an excellent executor of that estate.
Yeah.
She probably took care of the house stuff for him. I imagine she set everything up
Yeah.
so that he could be fine.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, like she goes over to the house every Sunday, maybe to have dinner, make sure he has groceries in his fridge, brings up community college again. Because they do seem fairly close,
Yeah. They
you
do.
know,
They do.
which is maybe also why it feels like their parents are dead, because they do feel like they're depending on each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think because Josie's so capable, that was where I was looking for, capable in those ways, that he didn't have to rise to the occasion, if you will. And he could just kind of stay in his like sad sack, understandably so, if his parents had died, as we suppose. But yeah.
Yeah, so I think we covered Rob pretty well. Does anybody have anything else? Probably maybe.
Are we going to not talk about the fact that he's dating a 16-year-old the whole film?
I mean, I think we can talk about that maybe in the relationships portion
Okay.
of this episode.
Right,
Okay.
we should take a break before we get to it, because it's probably the part people want to hear for a Valentine's episode. So
Just
stay tuned.
That was excellent.
all right. So I'll say this, for a rom-com, this movie is rife with underage, overage relationships. Every single relationship in this movie is with someone who is over the age of 18 and someone who is under the age of 18. Josie is 25, and she's either being actively courted by her teacher who thinks she's underage, or she's actively courting a teenage boy. And then you have her brother Rob, who is also actively dating a 16-year-old girl who thinks that she's dating a high schooler. So, I feel for her.
Yeah, I mean, for everyone involved, but it's why there should be ethical oversight of any like undercover thing. It's just
Well, I mean, that's also, well, here's the thing. What we have to just put all this under is the 90s.
And rom-com.
Because obviously, like, this movie was created on the precedent. Like, the conceit of this movie, the romantic conceit, the cute couple, is a man who's probably closer to 30.
Yep.
He thinks he's falling in love
With a 17-year-old.
with the new high school student in his class. That is what the barrier to their relationship, because every rom-com has a barrier, right? The barrier to their relationship is the fact that he would be charged with statutory rape. You know, like the line in the movie,
big problem.
The line in the movie where he says, "Oh, what? Now it's okay for me to be attracted to you." I could have barfed, bro.
I did in my mouth.
Barfed.
Not only that, but the fact that it's Josie's fault both from Rob and from him. Like, she's the one who fucked up by telling...
Like, you're fucking up our good time,
You're
bro.
fucking up our good time by...
You're making it weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so where I'm going off with that is, so we have to teleport our brains back to the 90s, where the whole precedent of this movie people thought was fine. So if we're going to think about that, then of course within this movie it didn't even occur to like Gus, her boss, or anyone, that they would have to maybe have conversations with her about ethical consent when you are going to be dilly-dallying with high school students. Like, what are the rules? Do you get fucked up with them? Do you drink with them? Do you take drugs from them? Do you kiss them, make out with them, touch them? Like, all the stuff that I would hope they would talk about nowadays in a situation like this, I don't even think was an occurrence, obviously, because this movie lives in a universe where it's okay that the love interest is an adult thinking that he is in love with a teenage girl.
And him professing it is him telling everyone that he was attracted to a 17-year-old girl. He's confirming the inappropriate relationship by showing up at the baseball diamond.
For a job of which he got fired.
He's getting run out of town, reputation-wise.
For said inappropriate relationship that he then confirms he had, but it's okay now because she was a grown-up.
That's like when guys will say, but she's 18, she graduated high school. Like, we can start dating now. It's like, no. Just because it's become legally okay does not mean that it is ethically okay.
No.
Morally okay, socially acceptable, which I think is a big conversation that's happening now. I see this a lot on like TikTok and stuff like that. I feel like the generation that was formed teenage wise on TikTok is finally now aging into early adulthood. So there's this class consciousness happening right now around age gap relationships, and how if you're 19 and he's 32, just because you're 19 and legally okay does not mean that power dynamic isn't fucked.
Yep.
And weird. Especially if they knew you before you turned 18. And like, they're not heroes because they waited until you were legal.
Yeah, no.
To get their hands on you. Like, Dane Cook is married to someone he's known since she was 15, and she's only like 20 something now, and he's like 50. That was a whole thing too when that happened.
I mean, also with like Elvis and
Priscilla.
an entire
absolutely.
an entire generation of rock stars. But who was Steven Tyler? Did he?
I mean, there was those
like,
famous little girl groupies.
Yeah.
Who bopped around for, like, Jimmy Page, Steven Tyler. I think they all dated this one girl who was 14, and they like long term lived together, dated. Like, this was a very normal quote unquote thing. And I think we're seeing the last remnants of that with this movie. And now it's not socially acceptable anymore. And so this movie definitely could not be made today. And watching it with my now brain, with our now culture, was like blowing my mind.
Oh yeah, my brain like was every time they like zoomed in on the teacher like thirst
Gazing
looking
at
at her.
her.
I was just like long gazing at her.
Go
I
to
was like,
jail. Go to jail now.
right, like do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
Don't you look at that young girl. I want to be like, look away from her.
Like, the daddy of 2 little girls is like,
Barf.
sir.
The way that I went from a person who's seen this movie, I don't know, 200 times and knows all the dialogue and loved it at one point in my life, and to be so immediately turned around as soon as the opening scene of him looking at her and just being like, this is fucked. This story is about a guy who is attracted to a teenager, an appropriate power dynamic between the teacher and a student to begin with. And also everybody else who's adults are also in relationships with teenagers. Like it's, and nobody, and there isn't, and there's no awareness
Yeah.
around any of it in the film.
Because I think what I just kept remembering when I was watching it is I know that Josie's 25.
Right.
Me as the viewer knows that she's an adult woman, but that motherfucker doesn't. And that alone is so deplorable that it is to get on board with that. And I was fully on board when I saw this movie when I was like 14 for the first time. I was like,
oh yeah,
oh my God. Like I said, it was definitely wish fulfillment of like a certain demographic, you know? And also what a danger.
The young, handsome, but like intellectually intense and like introverted, but like, you know, there's so much in there.
Well, and also if you were
teacher who's
reminds me of
into me.
Juno. And the guy in that relationship,
Jason Bateman's character. Yeah.
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 And because what they're doing is actually demonstrating like the toxic thing that actually happens in those kind of dynamics, specifically when, well, I guess the gender doesn't quite matter, but when I hear about it more from like an older guy and a young girl, is that, well, she's so mature, she's so smart, and they encourage that in this movie. Like what seems to interest him about her is that she is so educated and she is so intelligent and so quote unquote mature for her age, though she is not mature for her age.
Not even
She's
a
not
little bit.
mature for an 18-year-old socially.
Nope.
She's a dingaling. Like lovingly, I call her a dingaling. You know what I mean? And she's smart, but I wouldn't call her mature.
Yeah.
And
No.
but this is that toxic idea this movie sells.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that people do use all the time, is they're so mature for their age. And that also, when I used to work with teenage girls and they were actively in quote unquote relationships with older guys, you know, what's the message you always hear? Well, it's because I'm mature for my age and we're at the same level. Like teenage girls always think that they're maturing up instead of having the awareness yet developmentally that no, like that guy's dating you because he's immature, not because you're so mature. Like he's meeting you where you're at, not the reverse, because there's a reason why women his age don't date him or he doesn't want to date them.
Right. Or what you saw like with his girlfriend and his interaction where she was basically like imploring him to grow up. And she was only in it for one scene, but then she was imploring him of like, bro, I am a successful lawyer in New York City and we're like moving our life on. What are you doing?
Which I think also encourages this toxic, dangerous dynamic, which is, see, women his age are boring.
Right.
They're prudes. They're buttoned up bitches, business women, like no fun.
Or
but
she doesn't
like,
understand him.
yeah, but like this girl over here, who's arguably in high school, as far as he's aware, look how fun and free she is, and he can be free with her and himself.
And how much they have in common.
Yeah.
And they're on the same level intellectually. And like, he's just so deep.
Yeah.
And so like late 90s.
Yeah.
I could just.
Predator. He's a fucking
Well, and
predator.
he does demonstrate, like, a good example of this is when they're on the Ferris wheel and he's telling her about his personal life.
Yeah.
Like, that is something that if she was actually a teenage girl, which I do think she is developmentally, you eat that up because
about
you're
15.
you're in the confidence of an adult is so thrilling when you're young. And then you're in confidence of an attractive man, like an attractive person that you're like a person that you're attracted to. Like, that is so intoxicating. And that is what also creates that dynamic where a young girl does think that, well, they like me because I'm mature. They can tell me about serious stuff. And they even want my advice and they take it seriously. Like, they are actually demonstrating unintentionally in this movie all the beats that does create a gross, groomy power dynamic.
Yeah, without kind of the effective boundary setting. If something else came out along this time that had a similar relationship, although of course not the heartthrob guy, but did you ever watch Freaks and Geeks?
Maybe when it first came out, like I caught it on TV occasionally, but I've never like revisited it, so I it's a bad reference for me.
Oh, it's worth a revisit, actually.
I'm sure it is. People love it.
It's
got all the hot actors when they were brand new.
like all of them.
Yeah.
But the counselor in that, well, very much not the young heartthrob teacher motif person that this one is, but more the retired rocker who became a high school counselor.
Okay.
Semi-retired rocker. But he forms like a kind of familial relationship with Lindsay Weir, the main character.
Linda Cardellini.
Yes. But he is always appropriate. And he checks the boundaries. And then there's a point in time where they're all like totally going out to see this band and they got fake IDs, and guess whose band it is?
His.
And he sees them in the bar, and then like he tells the waitstaff, water's for them, they're underage, from the stage.
Because I think that reminds me of when he runs into Josie at that bar. As me, like, I'm a therapist who at certain times worked primarily with kids and teenagers, so basically like a therapy school setting.
Right.
If I was at a bar, especially if I was drinking with like my significant other, and one of the kids I work with rolled up on me and a gaggle of them, I'd be like, I hate to say this, babe, but we got to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Like, and also don't make eye contact. Don't even look over there. Like, even if those kids saw me and started to walk to me, I'd be like, sorry, and I would dip. Like, not even from a confidentiality perspective, from a it's not appropriate, and it's a bummer for me because I'm the adult, so I'm the one that has to leave.
Right. And that's as a therapist where there's like the like confidentiality aspect.
But not even that. Like, even if that wasn't even a part of it, even if I was just more of a teacher to them, and I could acknowledge their existence because they're, we all know who we are to each other, I would still be like, gotta leave. Because when I was an RA in college, I was the same age as a lot of my residents.
Right.
If I was at the same bar with them, I had to leave.
Yeah, I get it. I just wonder, like, I think as a teacher, there's an extra dynamic there, though. You're supposed to be a charge of the, like, this child's a charge of yours. Like, you're responsible for their care. As like, as a therapist, there's some ethical things that confidentiality, we can't just be like, go home.
Yeah, but even honestly, even then, if I was more of the teacher, I don't think I would like parent them in that moment. I would just be like, because also I wouldn't want to be a lame. Like, I'd be like, I'm not going to blow their spot up. If you know what I mean, if they have fake IDs and they came here and they're just having fun, kids are allowed to get into trouble. Yeah. Kids are allowed to act out, to a certain degree. Like, I would just be like, I got to get the fuck out of here. It would be my worst nightmare if I was him, to have someone like Josie roll up to me at a bar where I'd probably already had a few drinks. Like, I'd be like, oh no.
Yeah, and I wonder like what the, like how, because I've never been a teacher, I don't know how they cover that.
Yeah.
If that's something that, like, if you see a kid like that, you might have some responsibility to act. I don't know what they're...
Well, also, it's an under 18... Like, you don't have to be 21 at that bar. Remember, she gets the loser sticker on her hand, a loser stamp. So it's also a bar where all ages, which is also, okay. I think, as a teacher, wouldn't you avoid a bar like that?
Yep.
That high schoolers could go to?
God.
Why would you ever go to a bar that that high school students can get into?
I'm sure as a teacher, you're very aware of what are the haunts that kids go to. Yeah. Because either they can get away with underage drinking or they can just get in under 21.
Yeah.
And you would never go there. I would never go there unless I had to for some reason.
Why pretty much all venues in Chicago are 21 only.
Yeah. But there were places I went to. For my 18th birthday, my mom drove me and my friends to a club that was 16 and up.
Oh yeah.
So like, and if I was a teacher in my town, I would never go there.
Yeah, exactly. Because why would you go there?
Why would I even chance it? I wouldn't have a good time.
No, well, of course not. So, but I think there was one of the things we started talking about off mic about, like, why is it that this starts to happen? Like, beyond just like the 90s plot armor of things and the forbidden love kind of things, but what is it about sometimes being immersed in an environment that can start to blind you to things? Because I know I have, when I was doing the Civil Air Patrol in Air Force Boy Scouts, that was the first time I encountered this, was there are people who you would not find attractive at all. And these were, like all kid to kid, but there were people who you would find yourself going like, my brain is playing tricks on me. This person, I saw them 3 days ago when I had been immersed in a culture where like everybody wasn't wearing fatigues. I was not attracted to this person. And now that we're all in this homogenized environment, they're starting to get really attractive and like.
Do you mean like the blurred lines of the high school setting?
No, not the blurred lines. Oh, the blurred lines of like the adults being in the high school setting all the time. Like that's who they see most of the day. So like when we were on the air base, like we're seeing people in the same stuff. There's not the differences in how people dress or accentuate or whatever. And then you start to notice people and things differently. And I wonder to what degree that happens to teachers who are, I mean, I know it does because their friends are teachers, like people, some, not all teachers, not even most, like, but that effect can happen where it starts to like, you're over homogenized in an environment and a culture that you start to like identify as part of it. You're not.
I will say, as someone who, like I said, worked with a lot of teenagers and kids in different settings, so I was kind of in a similar role where I was one of the few adults that was fully immersed with kids, and also in that setting where part of being a good teacher therapist, if you will, was like ingratiating yourself with the kids, being in the know. Like I've talked on many episodes about how part of being a successful child and adolescent therapist is that you have to stay up to date with like what they're into, what are the trends, what are they watching, what are they listening to. So you have to somewhat kind of stay youthful to continue rapport and to have successful rapport, right? And I would say like I definitely know what it was like to witness adults who ate that shit up a bit too much.
Oh yeah.
And what I mean by that is like, here's the thing. It's very easy for kids to revere you as much as they think that you're a fucking dork and loser. You know what I mean? Like, and teachers who are cool, adults who are cool to teenagers, like it's very like flattering, and you have your riffs and your inside jokes and stuff like that. And I can see where certain people who aren't maybe, I don't know if I'm giving them a lot of grace in saying this. People who don't have a strong sense of self or maybe identity probably get a little bit too much from that dynamic. Like there was also a lot of conversation happening on TikTok about this young teacher who would like, the video would be pointing at her, but she would be like just showing like conversations she was having with, and there was a debate that was happening about, is she flirting too much with the teenage boys in these videos? And so the whole debate happened, and people were talking about how like sometimes people get into this field, like even thinking about the Rob conversation, where it almost like sparks that part of your identity, like almost like when we talk about corrective experiences of like, now I'm back in this dynamic where there's the cool boy in class, he's my student now, but he thinks I'm cool, and how like people, adults even, will still get caught up in that dynamic who aren't being thoughtful or mature enough about the slippery slope of that dynamic. Like the boundaries of like, when is joking becoming flirting? When are you like getting too caught up in that? And I would imagine it's people that probably like this character, who we get barely anything about him outside of Josie's perception of him. But the little we do get is he doesn't seem very happy in his relationship. They break up. He seems unsatisfied or unfulfilled. And so he strikes me as someone who might be getting a little bit too much of that zing from how much his students think he's cool.
We also see him wrapping up his high school hockey trophies.
And he's playing hockey in class and showing off his hockey skills. Like, he's also maybe someone who's still over-identifying with that time in his life and isn't satisfied with the adultness in his life. So he's getting his needs met by how much these kids look up to him and are into him potentially. And that's dangerous. And if you're going to work with kids, you need to get that shit sorted out, because you don't want to be in these enmeshed relationships with kids.
Well, correct. You
it's
need
inappropriate.
You need to be able to have
boundaries
and a recognition that you are there to serve them and their futures, not them doing anything for you other than career satisfaction.
Yeah.
But and that's what I mean of like recognizing the importance of that effect of where you're getting over homogenized with an environment. Like, you're seeing them, you're hearing their drama, you're in,
Okay.
like, you're in there. Like, not saying like that doesn't happen. Not everybody that gets. I've worked, in a residential setting too, and like, never once did I remotely get attracted to students or anything like that. Like, not a thing. But when you start to see it, or when I DJ dances for high schoolers and like they're dressed up like little adults, you start to see how like people who are in this kind of setting all the time need to be mindful of how that effect of being over involved and over saturated in an environment can play on you if you're not mindfully attending to your stuff. Like you're saying, like whatever's going on inside of you needs to be dealt with and buttoned up, because for the very, very small majority that, or not small majority, let's use correct terms here, but the very small number of people where we do have teachers and students getting involved, I'm certain that that's part of it, is that they lost touch with how close they are to seeing young people all the time, that it starts to kind of change their perception of what's normal around them, as opposed to interacting with adults and realizing how very different teenagers are than grown-ups.
Like, they're losing the plot.
Like, they're losing the ability to like perceive that they're not that.
Yeah. And
because
also,
that's what becomes like that's what becomes present in their environment. You used a term off mic for it. What was it?
What?
For that, like, perception bias getting...
Proximity
bias. Yeah.
Yeah.
The proximity bias of like whatever you're around starts to become what you adjust to, and it becomes normal to you. So it's important to like be aware at all times, like, these are children.
Well, and also that, like...
But don't the adults in the equation have the responsibility to act like adults?
Oh,
of course.
1,000%.
Yeah. I know it's not an excuse for that to exist. It's more... What I'm saying is, like, it's important that people understand that when this does go this way of, like, a teacher loses their focus...
Yeah.
There's a human in there that's going to need to get treated at some point.
Sure.
To, like, find out, like, where'd this go wrong for you?
Well, like, also, what was the story you were starting to tell yourself?
Exactly.
Like, you see that with, like, real life cases like Mary Kay Letourneau, which has been a hot topic because of that May December movie that came out, where the story she would tell everybody, even though he was 12 and she was 35, is that, but he was the aggressor. He came on to me.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, and it's because, well, one, there's probably something not clicking in her mentally. And two, that she was dissatisfied in her adult life. But it's like, don't, like... He's a child, you know what I mean? Like, I think, and I see this a lot, like, not the sexual aspect of it, but like when I work with parents sometimes too, or like other adults, where they get so enmeshed in like younger people thinking that they're cool, or like being friendly, too friendly, or getting too much of their social needs met by like the adoration of, and the just being liked by their kids. And the peers, even like the cool mom shit, like in Mean Girls.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I've seen
Exactly.
therapists fall into that trap where they're like, how much, you can just see how much they're getting out of the kids liking them. And I'm like, it feels flattering when a teenager thinks you're cool because like they are the arbiters of cool in a lot of ways. And like you got to keep the ick going inside of you when a kid wants to cross the line.
Of course.
Because like in working with kids, I work with teenage boys and so they do that. And I was like 23. You know what I mean? So they would do that stupid teenage boy shit, like try to steal my pen, try to give me too many hugs, walk past me and like graze me. And if you had a camera on my face, I'm sure I was like making that ugh face like every time it happened, like involuntarily. But I could see like, I've seen other adults like, you know, like kind of get a little thrill out of that. I think the attention of it. Maybe that's where I was looking for earlier, like getting so much out of the attention of young people without realizing that, of course, they're giving you the attention because you have the power in this dynamic. And it's your responsibility to, like you were saying, Hannah, to like keep a fucking lid on that.
Of course. I mean, at all times, at no point ever should your relationship with a child as an adult be anything other than professional. Or if you're a mentor or whatever, but there's boundaries and limits, and at no point ever, if that kid's developing feelings for you or anything, is that something that you allow to remotely cross any lines? Like you hard wall address that immediately of like, hey, this will never be. That's not going to be a thing, and if that's not going to be okay, then we can't have this relationship. You know, like this. It's very important that the adult is the keeper of that at all times. There is no, well, the kid was the aggressor, the kid came on to me. No, that's why it's statutory rape. If it becomes a sexual thing, it's not okay.
Yeah.
And it's important to recognize for human beings that when we start to get that psychological effect going on, that we're investing in the environment we see, that you got to maintain at all times the awareness of this isn't the real world.
And even too, like, I would argue, I mean, I would assume since it's the end of the senior year that arguably Josie's 18. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so people, but even regardless of whether she's in his eyes legally of age, like that power dynamic is gross regardless. Because and how even if she was 18, that relationship still, which I think is like the argument that I hear online now, you know, where it's like, well, she was 19, like she's an adult, they're both adults, like,
oh, that was existed then too.
Yeah. And I think we're finally realizing consciously, like I said, class consciousness is rising, in that there's still power dynamics within these relationships. And that has to, like, even like I said, even if it was above board, right, that the way this relationship was conceived is like so inappropriate. And like you were saying, like, I don't know what is going on in his brain. I'm switching topics a little bit. What is going on in his brain when he shows up at the game at the end to kiss her in front of the whole town? Question mark.
I don't know. I'd never seen this before, and I honestly wanted the ending of this to be like he did not.
Yeah.
So badly.
Because also, like, a dumb move. Like, it's dumb for him to show up.
Like,
it doesn't make any how can he ever be a teacher again?
He can't.
Like,
yeah.
His reputation, also now it's in the paper of like one of the biggest cities in the country.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's not even just that, because I think we all have, you know, stories from our hometowns where one of the teachers years before married someone after they graduated, right? And everyone just kind of whispers about it.
Yep, my football coach did that.
I know exactly who I'm thinking of right now.
I mean, it happened when people were in their 30s, but
same.
Yeah.
Yeah. 60s, man.
And that's scandalous enough. Like, that's whispered about enough in small towns, right?
Yeah.
So this idea that he's basically doing that on a national stage. Like, what does that say about him?
A lot
from
more,
a developmental perspective, from a maturity perspective, from an intelligence perspective. Like, where is his sense of self-preservation?
I mean, I don't know at all. None. Plot armor.
Also,
90s plot armor.
This movie takes place over 2 months. So let's keep that in mind as well. He is risking his entire career, his life, if you will, for someone that he has known for 2 months, mostly under false pretenses. And he's going to gamble on that because what? They like the same poetry? And she's good at class assignments? Oh my God. Like, and also I think what is also disgusting about this is, like, you see in the movie that he really believes in her. Like, he's really he's bummed out that she's not going to go to college, right? And which is none of his goddamn business. But let's just argue that that's coming from like a well-intentioned place. Like, he sees this young girl, he sees her potential, she's not gonna use her potential, and that sucks. And he's like really wants to, like, the fact that also he's trying to engage with her from a mentor position, you know, while simultaneously engaging in these flirty behaviors with her, is also so gross.
Yep.
And also is part of that like power dynamic. They're not peers. Like, he is establishing over and over again, he's sending her such confusing signals. He's simultaneously stepping into this mentor-teacher dynamic with her, with the application thing, stuff like that. But then simultaneously talking to her at a bar, telling her about his girlfriend on the Ferris wheel, putting her in his confidence in a way that, if she really was a teenager, would be so genuinely confusing. And it does all that stuff. Like, when people say gross misogynistic shit like daddy issues, I hate that fucking term. Like, when they say the girl's got daddy issues, like, why is that a girl attracted to a guy who's like also like older than her or in this power dynamic with her? It's like, because there are these mixed signals happening. It's not just this girl's like fucked up and like they're attracted to a guy who reminds them of their dad. It's because a lot of guys will play into that dynamic by taking advantage of them, by offering them all the things they want, which is, I won't just be your romantic interest, but I'll also give you things that a father figure would give you.
Approval.
Yeah, approval, praise, motivation, encouragement,
Guidance.
and that's predatory. He is a predator.
He is a predator.
Oh my God, this movie is ruined, y'all.
Yeah, this movie is over. This movie is over.
This movie had me Googling the terms for the different stages of pedophilia. Like, this movie put me on an FBI list. This is how bananas the plot of this movie is.
Fortunately, they'll see you're a professional and they'll be like, yeah,
I'm going to be
mind.
pursued by the CIA because of this movie.
No.
My
CIA
Google
only
search
does
history is
external,
ruined.
So you're good. You'd be, the FBI,
The FBI,
for you.
the Fed.
Yep.
The Fed watching me is like, what's going on?
G-men are after you. But I can't stress enough, like, the foil between this and Freaks and Geeks, which again came out in the same year. Even when she does try, he checks her, but he maintains it's exactly what you're talking about. It's this adult who sees the potential in someone who had been a mathlete, who is like kind of falling in with the burnouts and she doesn't really belong there.
Like, he's actually trying to be a mentor to her.
He's being a mentor to her, including creating space for her to not succeed without it being his problem. Like, he's like, I'm invested in you, but like, I can't do this for you. And you're going to make the choices you're going to make, but you see the difference in the appropriate way that things should happen, where he is not a romantic interest in the slightest. He does not mince words. He does not mince his relationship. He does not at any point in time send a confusing message to her by and when she starts stepping like out of line, like, he revokes the first name basis thing and goes like, I think you probably better call me Mr. or whatever.
Yeah.
And
which I think's a decent boundary. Like, when I work with teenagers, they called me Miss Brittany.
yeah.
You know, to create, I think, that separation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need that. And I think if you want a foil to this movie, that would be my suggestion, beyond it being really good and tragic that it just ended, that show was full of a lot of really good examples of how this relationship was garbage, and that one was done well, where it is possible for there to be a mentor-mentee relationship between adults and kids, but like it can't be you're now exposing your life to them.
Yeah. Like,
And-
your personal life is none of their business.
And you're attracted to them, and like you're struggling with that, and you can't like
Yeah.
looking lustfully like no.
Yeah. And one thing also about teenagers, you probably also know this too, Hannah, from working with teenagers, is they sometimes want to know about your life because they want to cosplay being adults, right?
Yep.
And so they'll try to like know more about your personal life. And I was always like, no, maybe I'll tell you what I'm doing this weekend. but like it'd be something, I'd give them some dorky watered down answer. Like, I'm going to go to the library and like, I'm going to go like to a baseball game. But I was not telling them about like, they never knew if I was dating, if I was single. Like they didn't like, I was a adult to them, and there's nothing behind that. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't disclosing personal information, much less volunteering it like he is in this movie. Which is another sort of like boundary thing that's arguably grayer. I don't think it's gray, but just kind of putting that out there for anybody listening. Like that's also part of setting those boundaries as adults, is being mindful of what you're sharing with kids, teenagers, and how that can affect that power dynamic. Like you are not their peer.
No.
You are not their peer.
No.
And they want to be your peer because teenagers want to be adults. So teenagers want to be your peers. And your job as the adult, like you were saying, Hannah, is to say, sorry to bum you out, but we are not peers.
Yeah.
Right.
And actually, I'm being a protector of you by continuously reminding you that I am not a peer, that there's distinction between me and you. But there's also just this idea that just because we know she's 25 makes it okay.
Yeah, it doesn't. Because he didn't.
Yeah, because he didn't.
The whole thing he's contending with, the forbidden love thing, is he's contending with, like, am I getting attracted to a child, and am I slowly blurring my ethical lines and behavior to a realm that's creepy?
And if you wanted to talk about Hannah, like the Rob, and does she even have a name, the girl he's dating? The 16-year-old?
She does come up to him and tell him her name.
But, like, I don't know, they're starting to feel very similar, Rob and him, where it's like...
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean...
Yeah.
Again, this girl in the 16-year-old has no idea that. I mean, how do you not know that he's 25 or however 23
Well, you
or
don't
however the fuck he
know.
is.
Like when you're
but you
young,
don't know.
you're
But
dumb.
you don't know what you don't know as a
Yeah.
teenager. That's the whole reason why adults.
What are you going to do?
should-
Accuse a student at your school of being in his late 20s?
Yeah,
That would be such a wild idea.
But just thinking about what that's like as a 16-year-old and her not knowing, and this whole relationship is under false pretenses, and now what if this was her first relationship?
Well, she was going to lose her virginity to him.
Yeah, I know, because that's what she decided.
Yeah.
So I mean, and he is clearly leading her on, clearly giving her some promise of some kind. Otherwise, why would she just hang around?
There's some level of intimacy
some
between
level of
them because they're
something is-
touching. He's standing between her legs.
Yeah,
at
like
that
it's-
party.
Yeah, exactly. Like it very much feels like, I think one of the other victims in this movie is her. And again, that undermines your sense of self, that undermines your intuition, that undermines your ability to recognize romantic relationships in terms of what they can feel like and what they can be like. And that really, for me, puts Rob right next to Mr. Coulson.
Villain.
He is, because again, he's using a power dynamic. He is not her peer.
And he knows it.
He knows that
he has...
oh, by the way,
Yeah.
they don't fuck, so don't worry about it. They make it very fucking clear that they don't fuck. That's
Yeah,
the whole
and he's
point.
such a prince because...
He's such a prince because he's not going to fuck her, even though she's 16.
You know what I mean? Like, that's
she's
the
a
energy.
gymnast, by the way.
Yeah, it's like so gross. Like they keep doing like almost crotch shots of her. Like the way they're sexualizing her, it's all such a sign of the times. It's so gross.
Oh, I was in, like, showing up in booty shorts as Barbie and all the stuff that, like, at the prom, quote
Oh yeah, their outfits are nothing's passing dress code. Jessica Alba is wearing bikini tops as regular tops. I used to get stopped in the hallway around that same exact time because my shirts did not meet my pants because there was like a half of an inch of skin because my shirt rode up and wasn't touching my pants. I would get pulled aside.
Oh, yeah, the
and
fingertip
shamed for
test
that.
and everything else, yeah.
Yeah, which
Shorts,
is,
yeah.
you know, dress codes are misogynistic. We don't have to get into that. But like to wear like your bikini top in school was kind of wild in that movie. But I think one thing this movie is doing is hypersexualizing teenage girls.
Absolutely.
Oh, all the 90s teen movies did that.
Yeah.
It was bad.
And-
Of like, look at this, like, unattainably attractive 25-year-old or 28-year-old person that, like, what kind of message are we sending to anyone? Like, look at this body that you should have that's not attainable for your age group because you haven't filled out or had trainers and like diet plans and everything. And also, yeah, high school girls do look like that, and
Like
you should
women
probably
already.
pursue them.
Like
'cause,
they're basically women.
they're like it's
And they know what they're doing.
yeah. It's just problematic all over the place of like self-esteem crushing, and then like encouraging creeptoidness is gross.
Yeah.
Like,
And
gross.
because Rob does not have to, if he's only planning to be at the school for a few weeks, he can be single. He could bullshit and say he has a girlfriend who goes to a different school or
He
college.
could literally say anything, except he could literally do anything besides what he does.
He doesn't have to date anyone
much.
in the few weeks that he's there.
Exactly.
Which again goes to what we were talking earlier, where he must be getting something for himself out of this attention he's getting from this teenage girl.
Oh, of
And
course.
that's so
Absolutely.
self-serving. It's so irresponsible. And I think what you brought up, Hannah, is a really good point, which I don't even think we've had, like I said, social consciousness about until very recently, which is how when you take advantage of a young girl like that, you are, or a young person, like this would also
Absolutely.
be if the genders was flipped.
Absolutely.
Like you are you are doing something violent to them in the sense of their sense of self around romantic relationships, their sense of safety, the fact that God forbid if she'd slept with him, and like what that would mean to her about that her first time was robbed from her and what that means, and like you said, like her ability to trust herself, like all because it gave him a thrill that a 16-year-old wanted to fuck him.
Yep.
And like how self-serving it is when people choose to indulge, that's a generous word, choose to indulge in romantic relationships with younger people and with people they have power dynamics with, which is why, as we've said many times on the show, when you are a therapist, you don't ever get involved with your clients, even if they're not your clients anymore, because you have that power dynamic and you are being self-centered. Like if I were to get involved with a client, it would be because I'm getting something out of that dynamic, and I'm also stealing something from them, something
Yes,
very
exactly,
real and vulnerable, and to
Exactly.
be protected. And fuck me for that if I
Exactly.
did that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and you
Exactly.
gained access to that information in a way that you
Yeah, nefariously.
wouldn't have, not nefariously, but you wouldn't have had it.
Well, I'm using the information nefariously.
I don't know if I'd go that far. That's deliberate, but I think nefarious is deliberate intention to harm. But you gained it inauthentically,
Well, yeah,
and
like
you
that's
formed a relationship with the whole person at a level they may not have exposed to you
they're vulnerable.
in a way that they would have guarded much more carefully if they were dating you versus if they're trusting you to be their therapist, where they're going to tell you
Yeah.
the real deal. So you forming
sure, for sure.
a romantic relationship to that is inappropriate. Nefarious is farther than I go, but it's not okay.
I think it's nefarious. I think it's an abuse of power. Even people who become friends with their clients, maybe not even a
Like friendly.
Yeah, friendly or whatever.
You have to be the protector of that boundary.
You have to be the protector of that boundary. You have to be the one, again, like in professional settings, you have to act like a fucking professional. And if you can't do that, you need to figure out why.
And stop being the professional while you can't do it.
Yeah.
Like, and what I don't mean that people therapists who get into relationships with someone who's been a client doesn't become possibly a nefarious thing. What I mean is that if someone gets into a situation where they're crossing the boundary, it doesn't mean that what they're doing is deliberately evil. It doesn't stop it from being wrong. It's wrong. There's no defense of that. It's not okay.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
The ethical standard for that is 5 years, which
And
should be
even
no
if-
years.
Even
It should
if,
be no years. And
Ever.
what asshole came up with 5 years and decided that 5 years was long enough?
I think in Ohio it's 7 years.
Either way.
Yeah.
In here,
But I
it's-
mean, it doesn't
it's
matter.
5,
It's like finding
but
out
it's-
someone's your cousin.
Yeah, it's
Like, you're never going to stop being related to me, bro. Like, there's never going to be an expiration
And
date
the
on
things-
when you're like not someone I could be attracted to.
right. You're right. So you obtained information that allowed you a level of closeness and information that you wouldn't have had in a dating situation because you were a therapist. And like that's what the boundary is for. Because then if you created as a therapist side that you opened a relationship with this person, you are now playing at this relationship with a level of advantage that is outrageous.
It's not even playing field.
No.
Which I think is also the point you're making earlier about Rob, is that he knows he's 23. He's lived more life.
Yep.
He's already done high school. So he also, whether he's conscious of that or not,
Yes.
I'm sure he's not. He has like more information that he can use to his advantage with this girl. Like looking impressive and put together and mature and like all these personality traits or ways of being that would be impressive to a 16-year-old. And like I said, he does not have to date anybody. This movie, it would have been very easy to just not have her be a person in this movie.
Yep. They could have made that choice.
And for it to
they
be a
didn't.
running gag that she's so sexual with him and that he has to just push her away is very 90s, very gross.
Well, and to dance the weird line of like having Josie like have to be like, dude, she is 16 and you are a grown up at the party.
Yeah.
At their house that he's hosting for high schoolers.
Also, the implications of that.
It's bad. And for him to show a turn and like restrain and like,
I feel like,
like good that he didn't, take it any further than he did and cause more damage, but that doesn't absolve him of causing damage in the first place.
Yeah. And where I can also vilify Josie is that she also does not have to get romantically involved with a teenage boy. And as you see in this movie, she's not even really seeing him. She's seeing her way to redo the Billy Prince situation. And so she's not even, which I think is what happens when older people choose to be involved with younger people, is how much are you even seeing that person in front of you, so much as you're seeing what they symbolize to you,
right?
Whether it's a redo or an ego boost.
or the way you look through their eyes.
Yeah. The idea that I would also say to her, like, you are not being kind to this teenage boy. You are using him to make yourself feel better because you got humiliated in high school. And now you get to redo it and you get to be the popular girl that makes the popular boy fall in love with you. Like, leave him alone. You can get a good story without getting caught up in him.
Yeah, I mean, how would that story even go? Like, if we really take a step outside of this and really think about what actually happened and what that story actually would have been, which is she writes this story and then a week later, the information comes out that she was also pursuing somebody who was underage.
If this happened today, his parents would sue her. They'd sue the Chicago Sun-Times.
Yeah.
They would get sued out the fucking ass.
Yeah.
And the parents would be right to be pissed. On that note, have we ripped that enough? Have we ripped it up enough?
Perhaps too much.
Too much, perhaps.
Some would say too much.
Right. So we'll take a break here and then come back with treatment. So I could see Josie coming to my office and saying, I feel really lonely. I am a late bloomer. Like, I am not getting any like romantic fulfillment in my life. I don't know how to like do that part of my life. I'm successful at everything else, but not this.
I wore the same outfit I wore as Two-Face's girlfriend to my first day of high school.
Congratulations, Ben.
You're welcome.
And so, firstly, what I'd probably want to do, because if I'm working with someone and they're talking about like social cues and like I can't connect to other people, like after a while working with her, I'd probably pick up on her neurodivergency potential. And so I just wanted to let people know, in case they didn't know, a way that you can get tested for neurodivergency, and that can also be ADHD, stuff like that, so it's not just autism, is you get neuropsychological testing, and you get that through a psychologist. What is very confusing about our field is that there's a bunch of different names, and they sometimes do the same thing and they sometimes don't. So sometimes psychologists are also therapists, sometimes psychologists aren't therapists, and sometimes psychologists just do testing. But I, as a therapist, don't do testing, and a lot of psychiatrists don't do testing. See how this is stupid?
None psychiatrists do testing.
That's what I mean. This is all stupid.
Yeah.
So when you are looking for neuropsych testing, you reach out to a psychologist, hopefully one in network, because neuropsych testing is expensive because it takes about 2.5 days. So it's hours of treatment.
That's about $1,500.
Yeah, it's thousands of dollars potentially. So you want to find someone in network, which is what I always tell people. I go call your insurance directly and ask them for names because this is out of pocket is a little intense. And what you'll get from a neuropsych testing is they'll evaluate your executive functioning, they'll evaluate your social skills, they'll evaluate a lot of things.
We'd had to do a neuropsych eval in grad school. In my psychological testing class, I think, where we all took the whole gamut of the testing of what what one of those evaluations would be. So a part of it was that the whole class took the test and we got an average score, but it's so many different types of tests. It's not just for one thing, it's for maybe the whole gamut of DSM-5 criteria or DSM criteria that there is.
Like anxiety, you also get evaluated for depression. That. So it's a really good across the board thing you can get tested. It also helps you if you need accommodation, stuff like that, but it also just gives you a lot of information about yourself, and it is the way that you can get definitively diagnosed with neurodivergency is through neuropsych testing. So she's someone that after working with her for a bit, I might recommend that, because that can be a hard pill to swallow if I'm the first one bringing it up to someone that they might be neurodivergent, because there's a lot of negativity around that and stigmatization around being on the spectrum and yada yada. So I have to be very careful when I deliver that news. And like I tell people, it can be really enlightening, because she might be someone who just keeps thinking, what's wrong with me? Why am I so weird? Why don't people like me? And so this can just help people understand themselves better.
Absolutely.
And not, ideally, ironically, not feel maybe as othered, because it's just explaining to them that their brain works a little differently. And we can work with that. It's not a death sentence.
Absolutely.
To be neurodivergent.
No, it's not. It's common.
And in my experience of people who I've worked with, who I've suggested them getting neuropsych tested, it has been a good experience either way.
Yeah.
Because either way, they have more information than what they started out with. And even that is helpful. Even if the answer is, you don't have ADHD. You have anxiety and depression, because the symptoms are so fucking similar.
Yeah.
Right? So they're able to...
It rules things in and rules things out, which is helpful.
Exactly.
And then it would help me as her therapist to be like, do we just have to work on social skills, period? Like, is there something else going on that's like stunted her? Was that trauma in high school, kept her in a high school age? It also helps me to have realistic expectations and fair expectations of her in the work that I would do. Because if you're stunted because of like a trauma or something,
absolutely,
or because you're insecure or you're anxious and that's why you act the way you act, that's very different than like your brain just works differently.
Yeah.
Because you're neurodivergent, and we need to figure out a way to work with that.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do with Josie. So I'll just kind of leave that there.
Okay. I'll go, because I think mine will be kind of short. So I decided to work with the 16-year-old girl who Rob is ruining her life. And a part of the reason why I want to talk about this is because so much of my job is helping people identify what a healthy relationship is. And what the difference between a healthy relationship, an abusive relationship, and an unhealthy relationship. And how there's differences between that. And to be perfectly honest, you Google it and it comes up, and you have a million hits about what is a healthy relationship. And sometimes I think one of the most useful things we can share with teenagers is, what does a healthy relationship look like? Because they don't have the means to get that education in any other way, because we don't teach it. And so something that I would want to help the 16-year-old is having some awareness around what happened is not her fault.
Yeah.
That she wasn't doing something inappropriate or wrong. She was acting her age. She was engaging with someone who was her age. She was expecting that to be the truth.
So if it was a peer relationship to her.
It was a peer relationship to her, and her expectations made sense. And it would take, and there would have to be some self-esteem building. We would have to talk about healthy relationships. We'd have to talk about how to help her trust herself. Because when you get thrown off in this way, and also that he is a predator.
Yeah.
The way that we've been talking about him and what happened, he is a predator. He lies to her. He maintains a relationship with her under false pretenses. And what I think one of the biggest things that's missing from health classes that young people are getting, since we, God forbid, we actually talk about sex, is that they're missing this component of what relationships look like and what they can look like, and what really is the difference between some of these behaviors. And it would be really important to help her rebuild that for her, so that she isn't stunted and stuck in what a relationship looks like from the age of 16.
Yeah.
Because guess what? That can fucking happen.
Well, and also what's kind of dope about her actually is that she is so comfortable in her sexuality with him. You know what I mean? Like that she is a sexual person.
I don't know if she is, but I think that might just be how the movie made her.
But like how flirty she is, like, and I would worry for her that she would think that was her, like she was coming on to him, and like so you'd want to do that work about like no, like it's like you were saying, it's okay for you to be in touch with your sexuality and to want to act on that with someone that you thought was an appropriate partner.
Absolutely.
But I could see a girl her age like shutting that down.
Oh yeah,
and
for
like
sure.
vilifying that part of her after this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's who I would want to work with.
Cool.
I think that's probably who is most going to need to be worked with of anybody. I think when I look at this movie, I don't see anybody else that stands out to me beyond as like really needing how like Rob needed intervention a lot sooner to prevent him from getting stuck in a loop that enabled behavior to become justified in his brain as being okay.
You know what would happen is Rob, in real life, Rob would get in trouble with the police probably, and maybe to get court mandated therapy, and then he'd finally see you.
Maybe.
And then you'd have to talk about, hey buddy, what the fuck?
I mean, I don't do
with the choices you made.
But yeah, maybe. I think he probably at this point in time in the world probably sat in a pocket where that probably wouldn't go so far as court. I don't think.
Yeah.
I really don't think so. As messed up as that is, I don't think it would have gone that way. But I think for him, the movie to show the happy ending of him to be like working in the school where he deceived everybody and like sort of carried on like an almost relationship,
be around teenagers,
kids, and like just like I'm just like your bro now. I was actually like working for my sister. She was working, whatever justification he was selling himself in the world on is not okay. And I think for a recognition that I think I'm going to take the systemic approach here and kind of echo some of the things Hannah's saying, but there's a reason why it's such a pain in the ass to go to schools and like showing your ID and checking in at the office and doing all these things. And it's that we need to be aware and overseeing the aspects of anybody that's around kids. And people do get into traps where they can lose themselves for whatever is going on, and it's not okay. And it's other adults that need to be the keepers of other adults. Mm-hmm. People do lose themselves through all sorts of reasons, whether it be through inappropriate behavior, inappropriate sexual relationships, or even emotional ones, because just as much damage can be caused in inappropriate emotional attachments. But looking at the reason why licensing standards and checkpoints and other things and ID checks and volunteer screens at schools exist is to make sure that people don't have a history of doing behaviors like Rob did and then got hired by the school to be a coach of the same kids he just
Yeah.
Or that this other guy who is like read an article written about him by someone who turned out to be a reporter who, until like the camera guy came in and totally blew his cover because he didn't see him sitting there behind the hedgerow, was about to tell Josie that he was in love with her, is suddenly all okay now, and like everybody in the town is showing up to just like support Josie and like let her have her forbidden love. Like, what? Correct, this guy should not work with children ever again and should be registered because this is not okay.
Well, and even if like he wasn't taking responsibility for that, He should hate her fucking guts, bro. She ruined his life.
No. Mm-mm. He ruined his own life.
No, but I mean, like, in his mind. Let's say if he didn't think he did anything wrong, he could make it an argument in his head that, like, this woman pursued me under, like, the story was supposed to be about him, which that's the only true thing about this movie when Gus said the story's about this teacher.
Yeah.
And your relationship with him. So, like, the way that this
and he
works
was the
out, like,
asshole for that. What?
but, like, the happier ever after aspect of this is so unrealistic, because if he really felt like she fucked him over, like, you took advantage of me, like, you developed a relationship to me under false pretenses and make me look like a creep. You know what I mean? And you've ruined my life. You've ruined my job. I have to move out of this town. I can never do my career, like, my job again the way I do it now. Like, he should hate her fucking guts. You know what I mean? Like, he wouldn't be right to do it, but like that's what I mean. Like, that's the only thing that would make logical sense if I pursue his viewpoint.
Well, let's talk about her being naive again. You just told somebody whose life you ruined where to find you.
Well,
Are
also,
you stupid?
like, in real life, if he showed up at that baseball stadium, he would scream at her.
Or
like,
shoot her.
well, I hope he wouldn't go that far. But
It could. It does.
It's just anyway. So I think we're sliding into final thoughts, guys. So let's take our final break here and be right back. I think everybody knows our final thoughts. Like this. I mean, I don't think I'll ever watch this movie again. It's effectively ruined for me. I hadn't watched it since I was a teenager, and it was difficult to watch as an adult with my adult brain. And also, like, the way that, like I said, society has shifted and thinking about these dynamics as well. Like, so disgusting. I can't buy into this relationship. I can't believe this movie is still so beloved. This is the top movie now. This is going above Sleepless in Seattle in terms of a movie we have watched for this podcast that has been changed so dramatically from how I initially received it after we actually took a good look at it.
Yeah.
So this movie, not only do I hate this movie, I think this movie's dangerous. And it encourages a precedent that I think we've grown out of societally, but not enough. So so that's my final thoughts. Hannah?
I feel embarrassed that I used to feel that this used to feel romantic. Mm-hmm. Watching it felt really creepy and weird and felt like it really turned its head on me.
Yeah.
Watching this film. And I think, I'm never going to watch it again. There's no reason to watch it again. I'm never going to watch it again. And I agree that I do think it is dangerous to have something like this that
romanticizes
these kinds of relationships that are abusive. Mm-hmm. And so, this movie sucks, and now I hate it, and I probably know the dialogue to the entire goddamn film because I've probably seen it 200 times.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. R.I.P. Never been kissed.
Yeah.
Benjamin?
Yes, this is my first time seeing it.
Last time seeing it?
First time, last time.
First time, last time. I feel like I have entered into the Hannah realm of I'm never going to watch it again. It has entered the same space of Batman and Robin in my head where we just pretend it doesn't exist and we don't speak of it unless it's brought up. And in case, if it is brought up, we shit on it immediately. Mm-hmm. Because it does create a weird, dangerous thing. And I think we have moved mostly far enough away from this, but not far enough, and especially not through the lens of a teenage girl watching this who might be having some of those feelings where, like, that might not register. Or, a teenage boy, whatever. Same, like,
it just legitimizes this dynamic.
Right. Anything that legitimizes the dynamic that it's and it's okay to be attracted to who you're attracted to, but also, like, you need to put the, like, filters of what would other people think about this? What would I think if I saw my friend going through this? Like, does this feel okay? Is this actionable? Like, there's so many things that you look at that this routinely tries to hold characters sort of accountable for, but then goes like, haha, 90s rom-com, nobody's accountable for anything, everything's cool, and everybody gets what they want, which is secretly what we were flirting with the whole time, but also it's okay now because I was an adult even though you didn't think I was, and you like watch this now through 2024 lens and go, the fuck was going on in the writer's room?
Well, and I'll tell you this too. In real life, if he was a genuine predator, once she got revealed as being an adult, he'd probably lose all interest in her.
Yep.
And gross. It's just gross.
It felt disgusting to watch.
Yeah, my brain's been a little scrambled, and I was started to watch She's All That, which I thought was worse.
Ben texted me and was like, Usher's in this movie, and I was like, hold up. What movie are you watching? Because Usher is not in Never Been Kissed. And I almost knew immediately. I was like, I think he's watching She's All That. Because I do remember Usher's in that movie.
And I had said it as one of the ones that maybe we should put on the poll.
Yeah, for sure.
So because of baby brain, as I am on parental leave right now, my boop boop. Mm-hmm. This movie's title completely left until you said that. So I'm glad we did that.
That would have been funny if you had to... If we showed up today and you were like, I'm ready to talk about She's All That, and I'd be like, that's great. But we're talking about Never Been Kissed.
I would have been like, cool.
She's All That's a movie I might know all the words to.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. And
Hacky sack.
Oh, gross. I hate you for that.
I made all of like 5 minutes into that movie before I was like, and I hate this. And I think, as you probably have noticed from my messaging about this, that like, I hate this movie. I now might hate it more because at least those kids were all supposed to be in high school. He's extremely problematic, created some really bad boundary problems that we need to thoroughly extinguish. And these movies that we remember as like, oh, this is fun and neat, and like, look at all the rampant douchery. Like, it can stay there.
I mean, I guess what does feel promising about society is that this movie could not be made today.
No.
Like, it would be flamed immediately by social media.
Yeah.
And it would die before it was born.
Yeah.
Well, Ben Shapiro might like it, but beyond that.
Gross. Well, on that note, happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Find your true love that's an appropriate age. Thank you.
And as always, if you want to find us and flame us about our take on this movie, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Popcorn Psychology, Twitter /X at popcorn_psych. You can email us at popcornpsychology@gmail.com. If you want to support us, you can find us on Patreon and subscribe. If you are a $10 or more subscriber, you can get access early to our unedited episodes. And if you're a $50 or more, you can pick the movie we talk about. But be prepared, because if it's a movie like this one, we might break your heart. So, like I said before, happy Valentine's Day, and please only date adults. I'm begging you.